Okay, so there's been a drastic change within the insurance markets in Kenya as of March 2026. A bunch of different things have happened, some not too good, if I'm being honest with you, and some quite beneficial to insurers.
The first one with Kusuko Trident, I think that's been quite crazy from a trust perspective, right? A
Mhm.
lot of and for some reason, and maybe that was just their marketing. Trident had a lot of Uber drivers, Bolt drivers as their customer base, and some of these
Mhm.
guys were getting caught up by the police, not knowing that Trident had gone down. So there's a
Yeah,
communication issue there that just that also eroded trust, and I think that's where um, you know when we start talking about insurance and the penetration of insurance, I think these are the kind of things that don't increase penetration of
yeah,
insurance. People see insurance, as something that they must have, and if they had a choice, they wouldn't take it up. So uh, uh, news like that doesn't help. And then I'm skipping the financial performance perspective because I mean that's good from an insurance company perspective, right? But from a customer experience, what is the customer actually seeing, right?
exactly.
And I think from a development perspective, the structural shifts around digital are a big thing. Um, and this is becoming quite a large issue, because you're experiencing digital transformation everywhere else in your world, but to buy your insurance, you still need to talk to a broker. You still need to go visit somewhere. You need to see
Too
somebody.
much.
There's still this friction, and some of the friction, of course, you can't take away. A car still needs to be valued.
Mhm.
For life care, for life insurance, you still need a health check. But what are the ways in which we can help reduce that friction? And I just see
Exactly.
the comments. Somebody was just about to
With
review the
guidance.
Trident, the Trident uh, insurance, and that's a big issue, right? Like, why haven't they reached out to all their customers to tell them
Mhm.
that this is the issue, or why hasn't the regulator themselves done that? So this is a really good indicator, right? Well, when your net promoter is basically talking to how well customers feel the product is serving them, for them to stand by it and talk to other people about it, right? Whereas your CSAT is more around service. So when you look at your NPS score and then your CSAT score, what's nice about your CSAT is it's showing that you have a good service. When your NPS is down like that, is people are basically rating your product. So you've got these traditional methods that we use as metrics to talk about, customer experience. These are gleaned, from actual customers of these insurance companies, right? So the difference between the NPS and the CSAT, and then of course the net sentiment. Net sentiment is just open social media wide data, and as much as 0.83 looks concerning, uh, if I just take a bird's eye view with regards banking
Yeah,
and insurance,
not too
insurance
bad.
is doing well. However, when we look at NPS and when we compare banking and insurance on an NPS score perspective, banking is at 60 plus, whereas insurance is at 31, and it's going down. But let's be real, the product insurance, like I said earlier, is a grudge purchase. So what we focus more on is how you serve the customer. So are you serving the customer well? And the CSAT score talks to that. This
The sector's net sentiment here isn't too bad.
mm,
Basically, we use a tool that gathers all of the words people are talking about in this online about these insurance companies, and we get a number. All the good things being said, all the bad things being said, we aggregate all of that, and that's how we got the net sentiment over here as negative 0.83. It's not the best, but it's also not too bad. These numbers vary a lot by company. We found over here that NPS and CSAT for Britain are actually the highest in the situation compared to the other businesses. And despite being the highest, we found another interesting thing that we can look back into is that its net sentiment wasn't necessarily the highest. I think Britain had a net sentiment of negative 0.97, which it's not too low, but compared to Jubilee, compared to APA, compared to Sanlam, they're losing despite Sanlam, Jubilee, and APA not having better numbers in NPS and CSAT. And when you find this combination of realizing that, okay, people can be talking poorly about my company online, but they're reviewing me very well, reviewing our services very well, that means there has to be some type of, there's a missing link going on. And most of the time, it's communication. It's communication. So you might find that Britain is slightly better communicating the brand online compared to some of these other businesses here, or slightly worse. I think Nyasha can go ahead and say a few things as well.
Yeah, so let me just take a step back and so you understand where this data is coming from, right? So one is we have a 250,000 strong panel of Kenyans across across the country, where we poll them around when was the last time they used a certain service? Do they have this product? Do they interact with that organization, and how often they do it, and what's their feeling around that product or service. So that is the data that you're seeing here today. So the way we're able to compile this is by actually getting all that feedback. And this is data that was compiled in late last year, so H2 of last year. You can now see that the aggregate of Britain, Direct Line, Jubilee sits very high on the NPS side. So their products were meeting or are meeting their intended customer type. And I say customer type for a reason, because, a lot of us won't, Direct Line won't be the first organization that we think to call. But they've got a niche and they're doing very well in that niche. And we know that, even though with all the issues that they're having in that niche, and you can see that by the general, which is sitting at 60. So people are recommending the drivers, the users of Direct Line are recommending their product very highly. So the NPS talks about recommendation, and then CSAT talks about service. And what you then find is that, generally all organizations are doing very well with service. And I think that is attributable to the fact that you find a lot of insurance companies, and I'm sure you guys in the insurance industry are doing a whole lot more with regards creating more channels for people to use your service, to use your product, or to engage with a product, right? So I can call, I can email. I've seen a lot of WhatsApp bots out there in the market. So that is causing that CSAT to come up. But we'll talk more about that.
So how do we combine everything together, merging the anchor truth with social reality? Oh, Nyash, we actually found something really interesting going into the three companies that collapsed. We did a small analysis with social media just to give you to show the importance of how social sentiments can impact your company. So the first thing that we found that was honestly quite a bit funny was that there's a huge confusion and fear with people confusing CIC with corporate insurance company. A lot of people online really do think that these two insurers are the exact same. And I have no idea. So this is causing a lot of brand confusion, especially for issues with CSC, and causing a huge panic on their end as well. I think CSC actually put up a notice a few weeks ago on their Facebook, just telling the customers that it's not us, it's not us. And another suspicious thing is that I think, who is it? I don't want to get your name wrong. Rita. Rita mentioned something to do with Trident. You're about to get your claims. I mean, you're about to subscribe to Trident, but actually, the public kind of views that whatever is going on with Trident might be some type of fraud or scam, or it's some type of scheme. Like Nyasha, you mentioned that a lot of Uber drivers were the ones who are working with Trident. And funny thing is, people online have noticed this as well. I think somebody mentioned how multiple different agents were now telling the people who are coming to them, most of them being taxi drivers, Uber drivers, to subscribe to Trident. And now that they amass so many claims on a premium, and the company is failing, people are just calling it a premium harvest, a harvesting scheme, which is kind of hilarious to me. And another thing is that there's a huge optimism. There's a lot of market opportunism when it comes on the online space, and this crisis is currently happening. Many insurers, many small insurers, are putting their best foot forward to take up all of these customers who have kind of been left lingering by corporate insurance, KU, and Trident. So yeah, if you're an insurer, a slightly small insurer, maybe this is an opportunity you can take advantage of and scoop as many customers as possible. What we figured out is that the bigger the particular insurer, the more complaints they're going to have. Jubilee by far had the most mentions online. You might say this is because Jubilee, the public about the Jubilee government organization, but we did the best that we can to cut out as many mentions as possible about the Jubilee government organization. So this is primarily Jubilee Insurance. So a lot of people talk about Jubilee, a lot of people are talking about Britam, a lot of people are talking about Old Mutual. And as you see, it's a trend where the higher amount of people you have talking about you, the worse your net sentiment is almost meant to be. Direct Line, despite not having that many mentions, actually has quite the low net sentiment. And you might be wondering why is that happening? Why is that the case? And as you go deeper into this presentation, you actually realize so many complaints that are heading towards Direct Line. Direct Line, for whatever reason, are failing on their claims. A lot of the rating that we got over here, with NPS being high, we found that the overall net sentiment being negative 0.88, and cutting that across the line, it almost links with the average NPS as well, which is around 30 something. And you can see over here, all of these different companies are linking together at this intersection that shows that generally, if your customers themselves feel positively about your company and your brand, and your products that they've experienced, they're generally going to talk positively about them online, except in the experience of Direct Line, again, because I just had a massive amount of complaints online, and it's insane. So just to give you a small explanation of the different quadrants, is that we have the halo zone, the champion circle, the friction zone, and the contradictor zone. In the halo zone, that generally means that you have a positive reputation, but that's due to strong branding, but the satisfaction of the actual product is lacking. In the champion circle is the gold standard. You're succeeding in both delivering a good service and products, and the reputation online is amazing. And then there's the contradictor zone, where there's high satisfaction with the actual product, but then when it comes to being seen online in the public, your perception is poor. This usually shows that maybe you're lacking, or in your own marketing and communications online, or just your brand might feel like it's old or niche in a certain way in the public figure. And then there's a friction zone. No company wants to be in the friction zone. No brand wants to be in the friction zone. In the friction zone, that just generally means your product isn't doing too well with the ratings, and online people are talking poorly about your product or your brand. So let's get straight into it. Something interesting occurs, like I mentioned, when you put all these things together, we get the CX360. And this is the services, which is NPS and CSAT, and public perception, which is net sentiment. On the right side, you can see the champion circle. Not many people are actually in the champion circle. If anything, all of them are kind of just outside the champion circle. But what this shows is, again, we mentioned all of these businesses are in a passive trap. They are kind of getting comfortable with where they are currently. And when this happens, it's very hard for you to reach all the way up to the pinnacle of what success is in insurance. Well, the closest that we do have to the champions circle are actually quite a few companies, being Britam, APA, Sanlam, and Liberty, which are really close to entering the champions circle. These are the ones who are definitely in a passive trap, because if they just pushed a bit harder with the communications online, with the services, this is a circle to definitely be in. And then there's the contradictors like Direct Line, Old Mutual, Jubilee, which again, the services are kind of seen as okay, the services and products are good. They're not too bad. They're doing a decent job. But when it comes to how they're seen online, they're being bashed. With Direct Line, that could be claims. With Jubilee, that might be the app having an issue. With Old Mutual, again, they could be claims taking too long. And then those few companies here in the friction zone being Minute and ICA, which is a bit unfortunate. I don't know, Nyash, I'm sure you have a few words over here.
Yeah, and just maybe just to kind of again go back into a 10,000 view aspect. So if we look at what we're saying the champion circle is, right? It's you're getting right your communication, you're getting right product, and you're getting right service. All three are aligned, right? So if we take Britain, for example, they're doing well with regards to product and service. We've looked at that from their NPS side and their CSAT side, and their communication is pretty on mark. They're pretty good with communicating online and with the social media warriors. What that does is it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Where because customers go online and they see, okay, well, ooh, wow, why are people always talking about Direct Line? Well, it's because of these issues. Why are people talking about Britain? Oh, they're always talking nicely about Britain. So customers
Mhm.
then always want to call Britain first, right? And we are in an environment, a very competitive environment. So where, if you're in the friction zone, what you're seeing is that customers want and could move, right? Your products or service are just causing like people are just like, it's just too much to do to buy from you. Whereas when you're in the halo zone, you're doing well, but again, back to what Peter said, you're in a passive trap. Like there's too many passives, people between 6 and 7, or sorry, 6 and 8 in your NPS, meaning that these are people who are just like, yeah, these guys are good, but we I don't interact with them, or they don't bother me, I don't bother them, but I've got their product. Meaning that, a lot you could lose those customers. There's a higher propensity to churn when you've got those passives.
Mhm.
In the contradictor zone, the Jubilees, Mutual, and Direct Line are doing something right. You can see that they're moving out of the friction zone. Personally, we work with one or two of those organizations, and we know what they're doing to make their channels more accessible for their customers, so that the customers can actually get access to the product and services. That being said, there's work to be done with regards to social media and the communication outside. Of course, once you get into an environment where, like Britain, where your communication is great, what then starts to happen is that your cost of acquisition for each customer becomes lower and lower and lower, and that will drive you into the champion circle too. So I think that's something that organizations need to look out for.
Is to overcome these current service issues, champions must execute these 6 key themes that we have ahead. We found something interesting is that the best aspects of each one of these companies could be broken down into 6 spots. These are being claim processing, doing that faster, customer service, being faster, being rapid, resolving problems as fast as you possibly can. Uh, and then there's also fair values and investment offerings. This is an interesting one that we found. Customers now, when they think of MMF, they start to align that thinking with insurance companies. So being able to convert the insurance company itself from someone you go to when there are issues, turn it into an investment partner. So that's what we found. A lot of companies are winning also offer MMFs. And then there's product expansions. Customers want more products when it comes to different things like EV insurance, electric vehicle insurance. Or let's say you put in solar panels in your house and it gets damaged. You don't want insurance for those type of things as well. So looking as wide as you possibly can, looking outside of the box and thinking, what else could we possibly insure? What else do customers want that we could possibly offer? And then the funny one is being a bit more relatable with your marketing. This is all just about the sentiments online, how people feel about you online. But if your company marketing efforts are a lot more relatable to the specific customer, then you're gonna win. If you're incorporating different humors, different cultures, I know recently there was the whole Majembe and Bafu Destroyer fight. You can come in and talk about how our insurance can save your ribs from being injured or whatever. Just being as funny and as culturally relatable to your market. That definitely works. And then again, just engaging with the community with your CSR efforts, with the different programs that you can build to let people know that you're not just ensuring them, you're ensuring a brighter future for everyone else. So these 6 different themes across the board will improve your insurance brand. And then there's just a few critical events that we found during this time period that kind of shape the perception of a brand. And what we found that was interesting is that a lot of the spikes in mentions online that happen with insurance companies is when the brands are marketing themselves or when there's poor customer service happening. So it was either one of these. Brands just putting up huge masses worth of marketing with a specific product and campaigns, and then whenever there's a failure in customer service. So you might want to make that a bit more linear and get people to not just talk about your campaigns, but rather people talk about the experiences they have with your campaigns. I'm sure these are really interesting findings. I'm sure, Nyasha, you probably have something to say how those two can connect.
Yeah, and I think that's the back to what I said earlier about the hyper competitive nature of this market. What we see is that of course, you guys are spending a lot on social media and trying to build that, if you could call it, social media clout. I think the issues that we find when we're talking to brands is, how do you convert that into actual into actual users. But I think what we're seeing from this is that you need to be consistently talking about yourselves, about your products, and what you have. And with that, that allows that if there's anything negative, especially when somebody talks about a claim not being honored, they may not be talking about your brand, but the insurance market as a whole gets lumped in, and then everyone is saying, well, I had this bad experience at this point, I have this bad experience at this point. But the consistent conversation that is in looking at those 7 points in the previous slide allows you to be able to ride those waves when social media is bashing the insurance world. I think looking at all the challenges and the opportunities, there's really one message, and it's how do you actually build a communication channel that is resilient over and above just the calling to sell something or getting a call for someone claiming something, right? So we need to understand what are those moments of truth. And those moments of truth for us, and what we've seen through this research, are really around claims excellence, understanding what a customer is supposed to be claiming for, and allowing them to actually claim directly for that thing, and speed to resolution. Of course, sometimes I'll be claiming for something I'm not sure for, so how do you build into that stuff? Invest in communication resilient, communicating. What means if there's a problem, one way is to tell the process, to talk to them about the reliability and expand offerings. I think the opportunity from what we've seen in the research is actually just kids like to be a shareholders, have ourselves. So how do you expand the investing component, whether it's different types of MMFs or if it's just an MMF itself, to then allow you to tag on with that MMF, life insurance, health insurance, all those kind of things. Maybe the MMF pays for, so you invest in an MMF, and the returns pay for medical, right? So is that possible? Is that those are the kind of things that that I think the data is telling us.
Knowing is not enough. So how to take action matters. And where we are right now is at the webinar stage. You're here. You're reading this, you're listening to this, and you're being inspired by the ideas we're giving out and our trends that we're sharing and our content. Well, the next step would be a free 30-minute consultation that you could book with us, that you could email us and book with us later. After that would be a deep dive analysis of your NPS, your CSAT, and your net sentiment numbers, where Ajua will come and gather the NPS CSAT numbers from your customers, and we at Nendo will gather the net sentiment numbers. And finally will be a tailored CX360 report for your brand, where we will create the different quadrants and compare you against your competitors for this period that we are in the year. And through this analysis, we'll help you see, think, and win by providing actionable strategic plans for your company to improve and win against competitors.